Hello and welcome to my video for the full supermoon in Capricorn happening on July 3rd, 2023 at 7:38 a.m. That's Eastern time. So if you happen to be watching from another time zone, you would have to adjust that for your local time. Okay, what I want to do in this video is in the first half give you some dates and aspects and degrees of where those aspects are happening so that you could jot those down, and then I want to share the chart with you. So we are going to focus on the full moon for the majority of the video. However, there's a couple of things happening right around and just after that are worthy of mentioning also, and so we'll have a brief discussion on those. But I do want to show you the chart because I think it's important to look at where the planets are and get familiar with that. So if you already are into astrology, you know why these things are important. And if you are just starting to follow astrology, yay! And I will explain why these things are important. So let's get the jotting down out of the way and then we'll hop over to the chart. Okay. On July 1st, we have Mercury conjunct the Sun. So when planets are conjunct, they are near each other or exact in degree. That's happening at 9 degrees of Cancer. On July 2nd, we have Venus in Leo is square Uranus in Taurus, and that's at 21 degrees, okay? So when we have a square, that's generally a tense aspect or would be considered a tense aspect. Conjunction is, like I said, when the planets are close together. However, they are blending their energies in that aspect, whereas a square is exactly what it sounds like. It may be more difficult for those two, you know, it's square. It doesn't sort of flow as well, I should say. Okay, moving on. The full moon is at 11 degrees. So the moon will be at 11 degrees of Capricorn and the sun will be at 11 degrees of Cancer. And I'll show you that in the chart. On July 10th, we have Mercury opposing Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. On July 17th, we have the nodes are shifting into Aries and Libra, and then that is also the same day as the new moon. And July 21st, we have the sun opposing Mercury. Again, Pluto is parked at 29 degrees of Capricorn, so anything that moves across on the opposite side of the chart is going to oppose him, not a him. July 22nd, Venus stations retrograde at 28 degrees of Capricorn, 28 degrees of Leo. And what station retrograde means, so retrograde is when a planet from our perspective appears to be moving backward. When it stations retrograde, it is really sort of stopping at that degree. So it's going to go all the way to 28 degrees of Leo, stop there, and then turn around and go back, essentially. Wherever it stations retrograde and then wherever it stations direct again, those 2 points are very important. So that's why you want to jot that one down. July 28th, Mercury moves into Virgo. And so that is a pretty fast move. If I mentioned at the at the beginning of the video that Mercury starts out the month on the 1st at 9 degrees of Cancer. So going all the way through Cancer, all the way through Leo, and then hopping into Virgo within 28 days. So that's pretty quick. Mercury is the planet of communication and intelligence. And so that's just lots and lots and lots of communication coming at us, to us, that we're having, all of that. Okay, so now I want to take a look at. So here on the screen, we have the picture of the chart for the full supermoon in Capricorn on July 3rd, 2023. So what this chart shows really is what the planets look like in the sky from our perspective on Earth. if we were to stand right here in the middle. So we have the moon over here at 11 degrees of Capricorn, and the sun is at 11 degrees of Cancer. When they're exact, 11 degrees, 18 minutes is the moment that the moon is considered full. So what the sun is shining its light over here in Cancer, and the moon is reflecting that, right? So this is called an opposition when planets are directly across from each other. And so what we are always looking at a full moon is really the culmination of something. So most likely some emotions. We've kind of reached the limit over the last 28 days of all of the information that we've collected and what we've been doing. So that's kind of the more general cycle that we're looking back. Also, this moon would tie back to whatever maybe goals or intentions that you set back in January at the Capricorn. Actually, I think it was probably late December. The Capricorn new moon. So you would go back to that time too. So we're looking over this 6-month period now to say, really, what progress have we made on those goals or intentions that we set, or if we have things that have been sort of in motion, even prior to that, then, where are we with those? Are we ready to release some things to make room for other things or to make growth in other areas? Or are we going to continue on with these same goals? And so this can really be, so when we have this, we're halfway through the year now, right? And when we have the sun over here in Cancer, Cancer is the sign of home and family. Cancer rules the moon. And so I mentioned, one of the points that I mentioned was the very 1st of July, we have Mercury and the sun really up here at 9 degrees, tightly conjunct each other. And so that kind of kicks off the month. And if we think about kind of how the month is going to play out. So at the first, we have this conjunction with Mercury and the sun. And that really is a good time to, when they're that close together and really kind of for probably the first 10 days to 2 weeks, but initially in that very first period when they're really tightly conjunct, we want to say that's a really good time to have mental focus on something. So you probably are going to feel like you have really good concentration. You may want to have a lot of conversation about whatever it is that you are working on, if you have a project, or if you're just having some clarity about a problem, something that you have been working on. This would really be a good time to write. So if you have a creative writing project or something in that, that you have to do paperwork, something like that, that would be a really good time to spend those first couple of days writing, maybe putting those thoughts together and formulating some sort of plan to address whatever, the thing is that you have that has your attention and focus, okay? As Mercury and the sun kind of start to separate, would probably be and here by the full moon, they're still pretty close, about 3 degrees, but still conjunct, and that would be a better time maybe to then start verbally communicating, just because I think in the first maybe day or two, it might be difficult you might be getting so much out, it might be hard to receive communications that are coming to you. So just something to think about there, how you want to spend that really sharp mental energy that you have. Might be a better way to do that. All right, and then on the 2nd, I mentioned we have Venus in Leo. So she's down here at 22 degrees now, but on the 2nd, she's at 21 degrees. And so that is a square between Uranus and Venus. And squares are generally a little bit more tense energy, right? That's why they are a square. This can be a challenging time for relationships, just due to the fact that it is a tense aspect. So Venus rules love, relationships, money, attraction, all of those things. And so in an aspect with Uranus, where Uranus wants to express its freedom and individuality and uniqueness, that can just be a challenging time for relationships, right? Because we're all kind of feeling like we want to maybe express a little bit of our freedom and individuality in some way. And so just really something of note that it moves on pretty quickly. Obviously, the next day it's at 22 degrees and Venus is going to keep going forward. However, the reason that I mentioned that is because we also have the aspect later that we're going to talk about, which will have its own video, which is Venus retrograde. So just wanted to mention that there. So we have this Pluto-Mercury conjunction, then we have this Venus-Uranus square, and then we have the full moon, right? And at the full moon, like I said, might be full of emotions. We might be doing a lot of thinking about, who we are, what we want to do, who we are in our home, who we are out in the world. So if we think about Cancer being the sign of home and family, the mother, the nurturer, and our intuition, and then we think about Capricorn really being that sort of who we are out in the world, right? It's more career aspect, or it's more of our career, more of the career aspect of our life, of who we are out in the world. And so because a full moon is always in opposition, right? The planets, or the luminaries are directly across from each other. That is polarity, right? So it's kind of, think of it as being pulled over here and pulled over there. And so it's a time to consider what your balance is there between maybe the time you spend at home or the work you do at home and the time and the work that you do and spend outside of the home. Where is that balance for you? Does it feel balanced, or does it feel like it's a little bit more lopsided right now? And so that is kind of the thought behind this full moon. So let's just talk a little bit more about full moon in Capricorn. So it's just really about the balance, but finding that where we are at this midpoint in the year, it's really another, it's kind of like reforecasting, right? This is where we are at the midpoint. How do we want to spend the rest of the year knowing what we've gained so far and what work we have to do ahead, right? So anytime Capricorn is very, sort of goal focused, right? Results oriented kind of sign. And so building, those are the flavors of that. And so you really are being asked here to think about, what kind of goals do you want to set for yourself so that you have balance between work and home? And then how realistic are you about, the effort that you're going to put into those goals? So we can write down whatever we want, but we also have to be thinking about the amount of effort that we're going to be putting into that. Do we have the resources, or how can we get planning to do that, right? So that's really what the Capricorn full moon is asking us to kind of evaluate. All right. So right after that, the next, I think, big aspect. So I also mentioned that, Mercury starts up here a little bit. Actually, I'm just going to flip the chart back just so you can see. So right here we have this conjunction pretty close of Mercury and the Sun at 9 degrees. And that's where he starts at the beginning of the month. But remember, I said he's going to go all the way through this sign, all the way through Leo. So he's going to be touching, he's going to get up to Venus. Mars is also going to be moving on, but he'll be moving into Virgo here by the 28th of the month. And so that is just a lot of mental activity, a lot of communication, maybe a lot of short distance travel. It's just fast. So just another thing that I wanted to mention and keep note of. So on the 10th, we have Mercury here is at, let's go one more. Oops. Right, I'm not going to be able to get it exactly unless I change 2 hours. But we have this opposition here between Mercury. So he's moved around here, and now he's going to oppose Pluto. So Pluto is also in the sign of Capricorn and at 29 degrees. All right, so when Mercury gets down to 29 degrees of Cancer, we'll be making an opposition to Pluto over here in Capricorn. And this can be good energy for getting to really solving a problem, getting down to digging deep and getting down to the root of a problem between you and then maybe another person or a situation that maybe you're involved in. It can also be energy where you could be trying really hard to convince someone of something maybe that you believe in or that you believe to be the truth, and also could work in reverse where maybe someone could be heavily communicating with you, focused on, you know, getting you to kind of side with them for something. So just something to be mindful of there. It's also good energy for possibly bringing up hidden things or secrets, just because, you know, Pluto is Lord of the underworld. And then also could be, just sort of back to the other, could be sort of serious mental concentration, focus really just on one thing. So maybe obsessing is a better word, obsessing about sort of one thing. And so again, just energy to be mindful of, and that's happening on the 10th. Mercury moves pretty fast, so it's not going to be, you know, for the entire month. But again, it's just another point of picking up the important communication days of the month. All right. Then what do we have after that? We had the north nodes are switching from from Taurus and Scorpio and into Aries and Libra. And so let me show you what that looks like. So this here, what looks like the Omega sign, is the north node. That's the transiting north node. So transiting means the current placement of the planet or the position. This is not a planet, it is the position that we track. And so it's at 1 degree of Taurus, and the south node is always directly opposite it. So it is at 1 degree of Scorpio. Those are going to switch, and they always travel backwards. So the planets when they go in retrograde, they appear to be moving backwards. However, the nodes are almost always moving in reverse, so the opposite direction of the planets. So they are going to switch and go to 29 degrees of Libra, 0 degrees of Libra and 0 degrees of Aries. So everything goes to 29 degrees and then 29. Okay, so where the transiting north node is, that is our collective destiny, right? That's what we are moving toward. In your chart, what is important, not just to know where the transiting node is, but your natal chart, you need to know where your natal north node is and your south node. So that is your personal destiny, if you will. So that is what you are striving or aspiring to be and moving toward in this lifetime. So let me say that better. The south node is explained as what we come into this life with already, things we know how to do. It's the natural tendencies and behaviors, gifts that you have that for your life. So that's sort of like your past collective, right? These are all the things you brought with you into this life. And the north node is where you're moving to. So it's always in opposition. So it's always a point of sort of learning how to lean into the north node and then, you know, probably fully embrace it as our life moves on. And so is another reason why we track where the collective north node is, because that's where we're moving. That's our destiny as a planet, right? That's where we're moving toward, where we should be. And then everything always we want to track back to how does that compare to our natal chart, not just where it is right now, but what kind of aspect is it making to us, because that adds a very good flavor to where you are in your life right now. So I'm going to do a whole separate video too on the nodes, because they shift on the 17th. So one, we have a little bit of time for another video, and I think that is a good amount of information for its own video. Okay. All right. And then the last aspect that I want to talk about is the station retrograde of Venus. So, as I mentioned before, Venus rules love, relationships, attraction, money. And so when Venus goes retrograde, there is a good list of information that is really helpful to know just before that retrograde starts. So it's not unusual for Venus to go retrograde, but it doesn't happen as often as, say, Mercury retrograde. And so because the periods between retrograde are longer, we may not realize its effect on us or the effect it's having on us. And so I do think it is worthy of its own video, so I am going to do that. And it won't be terribly long, but we'll have a great deal of information, and then we'll talk about also what does it mean to be in retrograde? What is the planet doing? What does that mean to us? And then all of the parts that go with retrograde, really, for a planet. So, all right. And then I already mentioned that Mercury is going to be in Virgo by the 28th. So really, I think the theme of the whole month is the importance of a lot of communication coming at us, probably lots of kinds of communication, right? Loud communication, and I don't just mean loud as in volume, but things that are maybe shocking or unexpected or a surprise or not, but things that have been limping along maybe are sort of falling apart. And so I think it's at the full moon is, again, it's a really good time to then just be gathering your information. You'll have by then to take sort of stock and process of your emotions, and then really with the full moon being in that balance between what I think is home and family and out in the world and career, really putting your thoughts together on that. And so not necessarily making a plan, right? We're trying to figure out right now what is the best course of action for us going forward based on all the information we have right now, and then how can we start to formulate a plan for that, right? Not necessarily planting seeds yet, but what do we want that to look like in the future? For the rest of the year, we'll start to have more planets go retrograde. So I'll just show you very quickly what currently is. We have Pluto going retrograde. Pluto is the furthest planet out, and he has about a 248 year orbit. And so when he crosses signs, when he gets at an anaretic degree, 29 degrees is an anaretic degree, something else we'll talk about, but that's the last he's moving retrograde now, so he's going to back up into Capricorn a little further, and then he is next year going to move back into Aquarius. And when they're crossing over those final degrees like that, they are really cleaning up the final pieces of the work that they were there to do in that house. So Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008. If you are living in America, that was the housing crash, that was the banks bailout, that was electing Barack Obama as our first African-American president, lots of Plutonian themes happening in that house of Capricorn, which is really Capricorn is all about building, structure, corporations, career. It's all of that. It's big money stuff, right? Big money. It rules banks, corporations, governments, hierarchy, architecture, tradition. It's ruled by Saturn, which is Chronos, right? Father Time, boundaries, restrictions. So Pluto has been going through Capricorn since 2008. Don't I know it? And he's kind of in the last final stages here, and so he's gonna clean it out. There will be nothing swept under the rug. Everything will be dusted out and taken care of. And so you may have been seeing some of that around the world as he moved. So he went into, I always say he, I don't know why, but Pluto went into Aquarius for just a couple of degrees, and then let's see, I believe it was in May, started to retrograde, and then just June 11th pop back into Capricorn. So you might look back and see if you remember what was happening in your life on June 11th, if you heard anything. So he's gonna continue to retrograde here and then go back forward again next year. So Pluto's in retrograde. Saturn is in retrograde currently. Neptune is currently in retrograde. And we will also have, who is next? Uranus is going retrograde. Venus is going to retrograde. And Venus actually is in retrograde and doesn't get out of her shadow period until October 8th. I think 8th or 9th. So that's a pretty long period of, again, another reason why I think it deserves its own bit of video time and as many details as I can give you. So for the rest of this year, that's kind of what we're doing. When planets are in retrograde, we're kind of going inward and, doing the assessment on ourselves. I do want to say thank you so much for sticking around and watching. And if you would like a copy of your natal chart, you can get that from astro-seek.com, and I will put a link to that below. We'll require you to put in your date of birth, time of birth, which is necessary, and also the location. So you'll need those 3 pieces of information. This is for Western tropical astrology and using the whole sign house system. So that uses a rising sign, which requires your your time of birth. So you'll need those. If you don't want to do that, you can also hop over to my website, and I'll put a link to that below. And you can send me an email with those 3 pieces of information, and I will send you one of these charts as just like what we looked at earlier in the video. So both of those, if you want to track along, those are good pieces of information for you to have. Astro-seek.com is also a wonderful website for learning about all the planets. There's a ton of information out there. It's a great website, so I highly recommend it. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.